We have a number of sayings about beauty, don't we? Beauty is only skin deep. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. But when disease hits us, we're reminded that godly beauty is something that no one can take away. Stay with us for a look at ministry, triumph, and a godly outlook in the midst of pain. My name is Mike Dyes. Welcome to Weekend Connection. Now, let's get connected. Our guest today is Tiffany Smiling, writer, entrepreneur, ministry co-founder. As a child, she was given just 3 months to live, a potentially devastating diagnosis. But today she has a story of victory in the midst of trials, and she's reaching out to help others who think they have no hope. First of all, welcome to Weekend Connection, Tiffany.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for joining us. With a name like Smiling, people might think your story would be one of happiness, ease, and pleasure. But you've actually had plenty of things in your life that could have wiped out any semblance of happiness from your life. What enables you to rise above the problems you faced?
Yes, when I was 10 years old, I began having seizures. And my family and I, we traveled around the country with different neurosurgeons. And I was eventually diagnosed with brain cancer. And the rarity was that I had 2 different types of brain cancer in one, in a brain tumor on my motor strip. And after 4 procedures to remove the tumor, they still weren't able to remove it. But in my 4th and final brain surgery, I actually suffered a stroke that paralyzed the left side of my body. And for me, this was the most horrifying thing. I was a 16-year-old girl, and I woke up in that hospital room that day, and I couldn't walk, and I couldn't talk, and I couldn't even move my body at all. And for me, the only source of strength in my most hopeless spot was my Lord. And it's amazing how His strength is made so perfect in our weaknesses.
What's the earliest memory you have of dealing with a medical problem? Was it around the age of 10?
Yes, I was on vacation in Colorado, and I began having a tingly feeling that came over the left side of my body. And it wasn't like a full seizure where you shake and fall to the ground yet. I eventually had those. But I had up to 20 minor seizures a day where I couldn't think, I couldn't look at you, I couldn't move for a second when I had the seizure.
How did you react to that, especially as somebody so young? What was your first thought? Was it a panicky situation?
I never was an anxious or nervous child. I was always very timid and chill and mild tone. But for me, I definitely knew I was different than the kids around me. I was kind of more like, I was never an outcast. I always fit in with my grades. So I never would panic, but I did have a fear that I would have one of the full seizures when I was at school, because being timid and being shy, my biggest fear was that, I was going to have a seizure at school and everyone's going to see it and I'm going to get all the negative attention. So I would walk daily with this fear in the back of my head.
Well, I recently had surgery, and I remember going to church. I'd roll around on my knee scooter, and somebody would be staring at me, and that's, as an adult, it can be uncomfortable. And I just imagine being somebody a lot younger going through that, a lot of unwanted attention.
Yes, it was the hardest thing for me was after that brain surgery where I had a stroke. I had been, before elevated, I was on my high school's homecoming court, and I was in a gown and with makeup and hair and with the quarterback on the homecoming field for the whole parade. And then the last time when I returned to high school, 3 months later, after the surgery, I was in a wheelchair. And I had had a stroke, and my head was shaved. I couldn't move my body at all. And so the drastic difference when I stepped back into high school was humiliating. I remember going in the halls of the high school, and just everyone stared at me, and it's almost this look of pity they have in their eyes. You already look bad, but you can just see in the eyes of others. They're confirming how bad you look. And to me, that was just a hard experience.
We're talking with Tiffany Smiling, cancer survivor and author of Your Dream, God's Plan. Let's talk about your family during this time. What did they do that helped you get through this?
My parents were absolutely amazing. They definitely fought for my life from the first day I had a seizure. My mom, she would tape scriptures all over my bedroom, and she would keep reminding me the Word of God and the Word of God. And then my parents, they would also kneel at my bed every night and pray over my life, pray over my room, pray over everything going on in my life. My dad practices the law, and so he's the one that was really fighting, getting us into the right hospitals, getting us into the right doctors, reminding me of who God told me I am and not what my circumstances say I am right now.
Mm.
But together as a family, we had to come in unity, knowing that my life was on the line and that we had to put up a fight and fight this battle together.
Was there anything that was said, maybe by a friend, and looking back, you think that's probably not the best thing they could have said? What can we learn in helping other people going through something like you went through? What can we say or not say? What advice would you have?
I would just advise people to be transparent. A lot of people just don't talk about it at all. Like it's not even doesn't even exist. But on the other end, we can see it in your face. Like I can see the pity in your eyes. And then other people will address it in a sense of like they feel sorry for you, so they're trying to encourage you because they feel sorry for you. I would encourage anyone that's trying to reach out and be an encouragement to someone going through a hard time. Just be a sincere friend. Just be there through the battle. Be there through the hurt. Be there. Be transparent. Tell them, I see this in your life right now. Is there anything I can help you with? Instead of like not acknowledging what had happened.
Was it difficult to be dependent on people the way that you were?
Yes. I had just turned 16 when this all happened. So I was so excited. I'm 16. I'm, kind of been in hospitals my whole life. And then I can finally drive. I finally have some independence. Mm-hmm. And then 3 months later, the seizure happened. And I went back to not being able to drive. And then when I had the stroke, now I was completely dependent. Even I couldn't get out of bed without help. I couldn't bathe myself without help. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't do anything. And there's a point where you're so desperate in such a weak and dark spot where you are fully forced to depend on the Lord. And that to me is exactly where his strength was made known in my life. The days I wanted to give up, he gave me more strength. The days that nothing was working out and I've been in therapy for hours and still no movement, it was there he spoke to me. It was just those small things that he kept pushing me further and further as I started depending on his strength instead of my own.
We're talking with Tiffany Smiling, cancer survivor and author of Your Dream, God's Plan. Through this, Tiffany, I imagine there were some thoughts about the idea of beauty. Here we have a teenage girl in her homecoming court, and really physically you had changed after the stroke, especially. What have you learned through this about what true beauty really is?
Yes, at 16, I wouldn't call myself superficial, but like any 16-year-old girl, I did care about my appearance and my image. I like to wear makeup and curl my hair, put together a nice outfit when I went to school. And as soon as I suffered the stroke and my whole body was paralyzed, I would look at myself in the mirror and see myself differently. It was almost like I lacked something because my physical appearance wasn't at par. And God started tearing down the barriers of my heart. And instead of healing my face overnight and fine-tuning those muscles that I was praying for, he started fine-tuning my heart and how I see people. And we live in a world that is so consumed by beauty everywhere we go, and having an image or an appearance. But the reality is we serve a God who's more consumed by our souls and who we are becoming and our character and how we treat people and how we work with people. And to me, all that was learned in those moments when I had my beauty stripped away. He was able to pour truth into me on what real beauty is in him.
Now, medically, are you still going through any kind of treatment, or is that something that is in the past now?
After my fourth surgery, I ended up going through 6 weeks of radiation when I was 17. and that's the last treatment that I received. 2 years ago, I was dismissed from St. Jude's. I'm now an outpatient. So I'm no longer, they keep you for about 10 years just to follow your case before they call you cured. And so I'm now an outpatient cured of cancer.
That's great. Now, we talked about the idea of beauty, and one of the things I was reading about is that you've actually been involved with orphans. And the Bible talks about how true religion and undefiled is visiting the orphans and the widows in their times of need. What have you been doing, and how did it get started, your reaching out in ministry to orphans?
Yes, so I ended up, after my procedures, I went to college. I was chasing a life of normalcy. I wanted to be a normal girl. And I ended up opening a business my junior year of college. It was a frozen yogurt store that I put in my hometown. And entrepreneurship was a huge thing for me. I loved it. And I started opening more businesses, and I started praying about other business opportunities that were coming my way. And the Lord started showing me a different kind of direction. He started showing me his plan to grow his kingdom instead of my kingdom here on this earth through these businesses. And he started speaking to me about the orphans. And I'd never met an orphan. I'd never been on a mission trip. I didn't know what he was trying to show me, but I kept asking questions and seeking him and seeking what he was trying to reveal to me. And eventually he started showing me his heart for me to go rescue orphans. See, I had been a child in need when I was younger and owned broken pieces of my life. He was revealing to me that he was going to use them to help rescue more children in need. And as I traveled the world and gone on trips in different countries, I started building homes for orphan children. So I've worked now in 4 different countries, but I started the With All My Heart Foundation, and we rescue the unreached and underprivileged children around the world. And over the past 5 years, we started building homes for children, and now we're also building the church. So we've planted a church in these countries, and we're doing church plants throughout the country. And we have feeding programs and education centers, too, to help truly rescue children, send them to school, give them a future, and allow them to trace the dreams that God has put in their life as well.
So you're really trying to do an all-around change in the life, not just meeting certain needs, but trying to pretty much meet all the needs through what you're doing in their lives.
Yes, I truly believe that every child that is in one of our homes is going to raise up and be leaders of their nation. And they're going to rise up in their country and be the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the people that make a difference there. And so I definitely believe in raising them as my own in a family-style environment where they discover their own identity and that God has a calling on their life as well, and helping them discover that and live that.
It sounds like a lot of what you're doing is outside what you would have called your comfort zone. Is that important, that we are willing to step out even beyond what we feel safe doing, realizing the Lord has called us to do it?
I believe every time the Lord calls us to do something, it's going to be scary and it's going to be uncomfortable. And because I feel like our human nature can't process how big the plan God is for us. And when we see pieces of it ahead of us, it kind of gets scary because we feel inadequate or insecure or broken over what's going on in our own life. But when God speaks to us in that direction he's called us to go, it usually every time is uncomfortable. For me, when he spoke to me about the orphans, I was running a business. And I was just 2 months graduated from college. I had taken out a loan to start the business, so I had no money to my name. And he's telling me to start building homes for orphans. And I felt like, I had my list of disqualifications. I'm a horrible speaker, I thought. I'm horrible at all these different things that he was telling me to go do to raise money to help orphans. And what I learned is if we don't feel scared or a little bit uncomfortable, sometimes we can take the own recognition when things go successfully for us. But when we are scared and uncomfortable, we are so forced to depend on God for his strength that he can make himself known through us in the work he's calling us to do.
We've been talking with Tiffany Smiling, cancer survivor, entrepreneur, author of Your Dream, God's Plan. We're just about out of time, Tiffany, but what's the last thing you'd like to say? What do you hope that people get from your story today?
I hope that every reader that gets a hold of our book and walks away knowing that God has a detailed plan for your life, And he longs to use every single piece, the good, the bad, the broken, the hurting, every piece of your story for his glory. And if you're in a spot right now where you're searching for your purpose, or you're in a spot right now where you're going through a painful situation, if you just push through the pain, God has a purpose for every detail of our life.
Tiffany Smiling, cancer survivor and author of Your Dream, God's Plan. And Tiffany, we appreciate your coming with us today. How can folks find out more about what you're doing?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. They can connect with me at tiffanysmiling.com, and then all of our foundation site and resources are all there too. They can link to in there. So tiffanysmiling.com.
tiffanysmiling.com. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
My name is Mike Dyes. Join us again next week for Weekend Connection.
Thank you for listening to this feature, a production of BBN, the Bible Broadcasting Network. BBN provides 24-hour Christian programming, great Christian music, and Bible teaching. Listen to BBN by clicking the link in the description.